Hi, I'm Angel with All Free Sewing and FleeceFun.com. Today I'm going to show you how to make a cute baby bib. You can make it with or without a pocket. For this project you will need the following. You'll need a printed out version of the bib PDF pattern that's available on FleeceFun.com. You'll need half a yard of cotton backed vinyl or terry cloth or flannel. Be sure to wash and dry the terry cloth and flannel before you begin to sew, as it will shrink in the wash. You can also use deluxe bar towels, which is what I've used, that you can buy at any discount store, and those work well for bibs too. You will also want a ballpoint pen, thread and needle, button, elastic or ponytail holder, depending on what closure you're going to use. You might also want Velcro, about 3 inches. If you do choose to make a terry cloth bib, you're going to want some either double fold bias tape, or you'll want single fold bias tape, and I'll show you how those work here in a minute. Something I learned with this project is that not all vinyls are baby safe. You need to be very careful when selecting a vinyl to sew this bib out of. So check with your merchant to make sure that the vinyl is safe to use for a baby bib. Some vinyls can emit fumes that are bad for a baby, so don't use a tablecloth. I learned not to do that, and just double check to make sure that the vinyl is safe to use for a baby. If you want to avoid that whole issue entirely, just use terry cloth. It's really easy to use, and you can make some really cute bibs that way. Now, you need to decide what version you're going to make. You're either going to make just the regular bib that has the rounded bottom, you're going to follow the dash line on the pattern, or you're going to make a bib with the pocket. If you're making a bib with the pocket out of the vinyl with a flannel back, I like to have the flannel back because I don't like the vinyl right against the baby's skin. You're going to need the whole length of the pattern. However, if you are just using a cloth that is double-sided, then you will only need to the second line, and it says so on the pattern where you can go, since you won't need the extra fold. Once you've decided what bib you're going to do, it's time to cut it out. It's a really good idea to cut out multiple at the same time, and you can see the layout that I have there if you want to cut out more than one. If you're making the pocket bib, cut out one of the vinyl and one of the flannel. If you're making a terry cloth bib, you can cut out just one, or if you want it extra thick, you can cut out 2 and make it doubly thick. But honestly, I think it's plenty thick just with the regular width that the cloth is itself. And you get to actually get more bang for your buck. You can make more from just making it one-sided with the terry cloth. If you're using vinyl, you want to avoid poking holes in it. As a matter of fact, we're going to try and keep that to a minimum, because that defeats the point of being vinyl if there's holes in it for water to get in. So what you'll need to do is just take a regular ballpoint pen and just trace the pattern. So trace the pattern on that. If you're using terry cloth or you're cutting out the flannel backing, you can just do it the traditional way, pin the pattern to it and cut it out from there. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do before you begin to sew is check the strap against the child. I've given you rough guidelines if you want to make the strap just meet. If it's an elastic, it's just going to meet right here. So it's going to be, the strap can be a little shorter because the elastic, it's just meeting right there, tip to tip. If you're having it attached with Velcro or a button, there's going to be overlap, so the strap will need to be a little longer. Honestly, the best way is just to take it and put it around your kid's neck to see how it fits, just so it's the right proper fit. You don't want it too low, or else it defeats the point of having a bib on itself, because food can get in. You don't want it so high up that it's choking the child. That's the nice thing about making your own patterns and making your own bibs, is that you can make it custom fit to your child. So once you've accomplished that, you've got the strap the right length, it's time to begin sewing. Now, if you're doing the vinyl with the pocket, you're going to put the vinyl side and the right side of the flannel together. You're going to pin it, and you're going to be very careful pinning it. Again, we don't want pinholes ruining the point of having vinyl. So you want to pin it inside the seam allowance. It's going to be actually a pretty small seam allowance of 0.25. So just right along the edge, pin it just enough so it'll stay there. Now, before you begin to sew, make sure that you know what enclosure you're using. If you're using the elastic enclosure, you can either use a small piece of elastic or a stretched out ponytail holder, stick it in on the edge, make a little loop. You want to make sure it is just the right size, just the right amount to go around your button, but not too big that it's loose. If you are using just terry cloth that's one-sided, all you're going to do is you're going to pin bias tape. You're either going to pinch it all the way around because you need to finish the edge of terry cloth. So you can start by doing that if you're doing a terry cloth bib. Or if you want to hide it, you don't like seeing the bias tape, you're going to use single-sided bias tape, single fold, and you're going to pin it so the right side of the bias tape is on the right side of the terry cloth. And I'm going to show you how you're going to sew that in a minute. Now it's time to sew. Using a 0.25 seam allowance, you're going to sew all the way around the bib. Now, if you're sewing the bib that has two sides together, you're going to leave a little gap in the bottom, about 2 to 3 inches wide, very, very bottom of the bib. You're going to sew a 0.25 seam allowance all the way around, all the way over the straps, all the way around. You're going to turn it right side out. Now, the great part about the fact that you have, if you're doing the little elastic enclosure, is that when you go to turn this really long, skinny strap right side out, you have a little loop that you can grab. I like to grab a crochet hook, just grab the loop. It makes it really easy to turn it right side out. You might even want to use on the vinyl your little crochet hook to kind of push out that seam just so it will give you a nice shape and you don't have it bubbling up at all. Once you've turned it right side out, what you're going to do is you're going to top stitch all the way around the bib again. And what I like to do is sew closed that gap while I'm top stitching, so just make sure you get that gap closed. Now that you've top stitched all the way around, it's time to make the pocket part on the vinyl pocket bib. Now, you'll notice there's two versions of the pocket bib that you can make. There's one that has only one fold, and that's for something with terry cloth, because it doesn't matter, the terry cloth is double-sided, and so you only need one fold to make the pocket bib. However, with the vinyl, it's two fold, basically, so you have only the vinyl facing out, so only food can get on the vinyl part and not on the flannel. So, to make it, what you're going to do is you're going to put the flannel facing up towards you. You're going to fold the vinyl up once, then you're going to flip it over. You're kind of making an accordion fold, and you're going to fold it up again so you only have vinyl facing you. And the pattern's designed so it should line up with this curve. And refer to the pattern when you do this because there's dotted lines to show you where the fold should be. Once you got it where you want it, line up your top stitching and just top stitch right there and make your pocket. And then you have your pocket bib. And to clean it, just flip it inside out so you can get to the corners and everything and make it nice and clean. You can even just take a Lysol wipe to it if you want. That's what I like to do most of the time. If you do choose to wash it, it needs to be cold and it needs to be delicate, and you need to line dry it, and you need to be very careful. I'd even do a test on a scrap just to make sure that'd be okay to go through the wash. Alright, so that's with the bib with the vinyl and the flannel. Now if you're just using terry cloth, you can either just sew double-sided bias tape all the way around. Be sure to tuck under the end of the bias tape so it makes a nice finish. If you are using single fold bias tape, what you're going to do is you're going to unfold one side. You're going to pin it right sides together. Then you're going to sew right along that crease. So you're sewing the terry cloth to your bias tape right along that crease. Then you're going to fold the tape down. You're going to fold it to the back, and then you're going to sew the tape down. And you can top stitch around it too if you want to make it look nice. And that's all you have to do to finish those edges. But you do want to make sure you finish the edges on the terry cloth because it will unravel. So that's just a personal preference if you want to be able to see the bias tape or not. Alright, now it's time to finalize the closures. Now, if you're just doing the elastic enclosure, all you're going to do is sew a button right onto the side right there and you're good to go. Now for me, I like to sew my buttons on using a machine. All I do is I use a satin stitch. I set it to the right width and I hand crank it to make sure it's right, and then after I know the width and spacing is just right, I just sew it on using my machine. I have no idea if that is correct or not, but that's what I do and it works well for me. All right, the other enclosure that you can do is a Velcro enclosure, which is much more popular. I like to have the option of having the button because my girls tend to be able to yank their bibs off, but Velcro is very easy. You're just going to sew a loop on one side and hook on the other, and I like to put a little button there just for some decoration. Really easy. It's also nice if you have a bunch of different ages of children because you can vary the strap length to fit underneath their chin. Or if the baby that you're making this for doesn't live in your home, it's a good way to go just because it can change the size if you're not exactly sure what's going to be best for their fit. The other enclosure is a button enclosure. All you're going to do is just measure your button, draw a line so you can make a buttonhole. This works well on terry cloth. I wouldn't attempt it on the vinyl and the flannel just because I just like to avoid poking holes in the vinyl if I can help it. But it works well on terry cloth. Just sew a button hole, follow the directions on your machine, make a buttonhole the right length, draw it out with your marking pen, sew a button on, and you're good to go. The great part about this bib pattern is that there are so many different variations of it that you can make. It's really up to your imagination. And I'm sure there's actually one that you could come up with. I live near trains, can you tell? That you can come up with yourself. So I'd be curious what someone else could come up with. So if you have any ideas, feel free to play around with it. For more great patterns, you can visit allfreesewing.com. You can also visit my website, fleecefun.com. And if you like this pattern, there's other patterns on my site you might also enjoy. You might also like the car seat cover tent canopy pattern. You might also enjoy the boutique style pant pattern. I'm Angel. Remember, velvet is pretentious, fleece is fun.